Y'all in the winning circle, shot some squares though. You in the killing fields, ignoring the scarecrows. Yeah, ho, I'm Benny Blanco in the last scene, making the power play high off for caffeine. This is a tag team, fantasy the bad dream. The male version of Kerry killing the glass queen. Bati bloggers, quit dodging my emails. Take that whack shit off, the real prevail.
Because nobody
you giving all the juice away now.
Oh, okay. I'll wait. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just rolling. I'm rolling. It is all connected.
You give it. Mike, you give it out. So to our audience, this is the Free Lunch Podcast. I am your boy Tight, and we got the main man BG with us. And if you haven't heard already, if you don't recognize the voice, we all know that is Michael Smith from ESPN. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, man. I thought we was past that. We family, man. Y'all okay? I got my feet. I didn't got my feet up on your couch. I had to win your refrigerator.
Yes.
And everything,
Welcome.
Welcome. Definitely. You definitely should feel at home, because that's what we do on this show, and that's who we are. But you, just to the audience, so they get caught up, and obviously we do some editing and all that. We kind of got into a sidebar before the show started about how we got started in the broadcast, and you all know BG and I how we kind of just started podcasting and eventually develop our own podcast network. So that's essentially some of the context to how we evolved into this dialogue. But Mike, we wanted to really, even before the his and hers, because there's a lot to cover that we kind of jotted down. I wanted to kind of take it back to New Orleans.
All right.
I'm from Mobile. I know all about New Orleans. BG from Selma, obviously.
And New Orleans. And New Orleans is one of my favorite cities. Throw that in there.
No doubt.
Food and women.
Music, all that. And just talk about growing up in New Orleans. I know your stepdad was in law enforcement. I know your mom was educator, but she also some background to your stepdad's band. So I kind of did. Oh man, because we do our research. This ain't no game, no gimmicks. No game, no gimmicks.
Okay, all right.
So I was waiting on you to bust a tune here in a minute, but I just talk about growing up in New Orleans and give us the whole 5-minute spiel, I guess, from high school.
Yeah,
to
man,
college.
I had such a wonderful upbringing, man. In that I had kind of exposure and experience and a taste of every type of perspective. Like I grew up in New Orleans. Well, first of all, needless to say, New Orleans was a much different place than it is now in terms of the makeup of the city, in terms of the layout of the city, because I grew up in New Orleans, obviously, pre-Katrina, 2005. I was born in 79, so I'm 37, grew up in the 80s and 90s. I am the son, the oldest son, to the youngest daughter of one of the city's most influential Baptist ministers, Reverend Thomas Nelson Washington, pastor of Historic Second Baptist Church, uptown, 50-some-odd years. So I'm a preacher. I'm not a PK, but I'm a preacher's grandkid. I'm a PGK. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I grew up in the church. You know what I'm saying? I was that kid. I was on the front row. I had the village raising me. I was the president of the Young Men's Usher Board. I was the dude that was dressed in black in the summer that was pulling the old ladies from under the pews when they was catching the Holy Ghost. I was that kid. You know what I'm saying? I was one opening the door for everybody. I was walking the people, to their seat in church and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? So, my grandparents were very influential in my life. My mom, just a rock, just did whatever it took. My mom commuted to and from Dallas and had us staying with my grandparents. But she worked in Dallas because that was the best job she can get. That's 5-6 hours away, for those that don't know, from New Orleans. But she made that drive because that's the hustle she had to do to provide as best she could for her two sons. I got a younger brother who's an actor in L.A. He's like 2 years younger than me. It's just the two of us. My dad, he was around. They separated a lot, kind of off and on. They were married when I was born. Separated a lot when I was young. Divorced when I was about 10. My mom's remarried to my stepdad that y'all know about, and he is a civil sheriff in New Orleans, but he's a singer. Bobby J and stuff like that is the band. He's a longtime singer for the Louisiana Purchase Band. So I grew up in a household that always had company, always had something going on, whether it was church related or band related or just whatever. It's like everybody always came to my mama's house. Hell, people used to just stay at my mama's house when they had no place to stay. She'd just take them in. So we always had like house guests and that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
so,
right.
you know, a lot of rehearsals, a lot of late night rehearsals, middle of the night. You know, music playing in the living room. You know, people up all night talking. So I was always, even though I might not have chimed in because I'd have got backhanded, but I was always kind of hip to grown folks' conversation. So I think that's kind of why, you know, I got a old soul, if you will, and kind of, you know, always wise beyond my years. I mean, you know, my parents just kept me on the straight and narrow, but we were provided for, you know, with some help from my grandparents and my mom's work ethic. We were provided for, but far from rich. But then again, as y'all know, when you come from that part of the country, it doesn't take a whole lot to feel rich. You could be hood rich, with, you know, if you don't have a whole lot. So we never wanted for. We didn't miss meals, but we knew what it was like to struggle. We knew what it was like to hustle, to grind. So we had good perspective. Also, I went to McDonald 35.
No, you did go to the 35.
I went to 35, yeah, all black high school.
I know about it because just to give you some perspective, I went to the SOAR I went to the SOAR program. Mom's a graduate of Xavier. I went to the SOAR program.
My mom went to Xavier too.
Yeah, I was in the SOAR program, and I don't know if you're familiar with that program. Summer program at Xavier during the summertime where they take in high school kids. So I did that engineering background and what have you. So I did that. I did that in '98. So I spent a lot of time on Xavier campus eating snacks.
Okay, so you were on Xavier campus in '98 when I was at Loyola because I graduated from high school in '97.
And actually, the big timers were just really making a name for themselves. Yeah. They were actually DJing our summer parties. They literally were in the gymnasium DJing at that time.
Yeah, no, small world. And
I met a lot of folks from the 35, and everybody be like, oh, I go to the 35, I go to the 35.
Right, yeah, no, and we were the Ron Eagles, and everybody's like, what's a Ron Eagle? That's an Iron Eagle with the eye drop. I don't know why they did it, but I say all that to say, you know, not to go too far off a tangent, but I say that to say that I really had the perfect upbringing in that, you know, I was able to have perspective. I didn't have everything, but we had enough. We had a house full of love. You know, I was raised in a disciplined household. I was raised to be respectful, and I was also raised where I was comfortable in every environment. Like I could be around people who had something, and I could be around some of the worst killers in New Orleans. You know, some of the people that just didn't have anything, but I was comfortable around them because my parents raised me that way. Like, so I was able to not be out of my element no matter what the situation was. So I could be, you know, in Eastover by my aunt's house, or I could be in the projects. But, you know, it was like I was cool either way, you know. And so, you know, I just had the best of both worlds, if you will. So it really gave me a good perspective when it came to when I got older. And, you know, now that I have my own family and the values that I'm passing down to my children.
So you went to Loyola University in New Orleans.
Yep.
I read an interview you did. You spoke about.
Oh wait, when was this interview from? Because I hope it wasn't. I hope I didn't say nothing dumb. When was this interview from?
No, it wasn't dumb. But you spoke about in y'all student government. I guess y'all call yourself Africa or.
Oh yeah. We had this little section. We had this little section in the student union where like 10 of us would sit. We call it Africa because Loyola, like you talk about culture shock. I went from an all-black high school at 35.
Exactly, that's the point I was
going to Loyola. Yeah, I went to Loyola, and you know it's a small school. It's uptown, but the black population is pretty small there. So we had this little section we'd all sit in, and we used to call it Africa. Yeah, that's funny.
Like you would have to really explain 35 for folks that don't understand.
35 is basically like a high school HBCU.
Yes.
It's like that's what it is. It's an HBCU except it's high school.
That's exactly what it is from the students I've met at 35. They prideful too. But you went from 35 to this Jesuit school.
Yeah.
What made you make that jump? Why didn't you go like to Xavier or somewhere like that?
Easy. School? 2 reasons: money and the major. Easy. Like I got a full ride, full scholarship. You know, like tuition, fees. And a room on campus. Only thing I had to pay for was books and meals. Books I ended up buying used or getting from somebody else. Meals I stopped paying for quick once I got to know the people that worked in the cafeteria and worked in the union. They just gave me food for free. So that was easy.
The hustle.
But, exactly. But in terms of why I went to Loyola, really because besides the money was there, the major, like, I realized, I had teachers in high school at 35 that kind of steered me to the communications, direction. And even in my yearbook, it's funny, somebody showed me this recently. In my yearbook, they asked like what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to be a sports center anchor, like Stuart Scott. Go figure, right? And
wow.
Yeah, it's real talk.
Wow.
Can I cuss on this podcast, by the way?
Oh, definitely.
All right, cool. Just making sure, like, because it'll slip every.
Oh, definitely. I'm gonna bring up that
cool.
one time you cussed live on TV.
For sure. Absolutely. But I went to Loyola because it was a really good communication school. Like Loyola is on TV station, and they're even building it up now. The newspapers won a lot of awards. So in high school, people kind of steered me toward communications, and Loyola is one of the best schools, not just in Louisiana, but in the nation, to go to if you're interested in mass communications.
You talked about Stuart Scott. Like, were there any other people that made you focus in and aspiring to being a big-time journalist at some point in your life?
You know, it's funny, and I think I may have told him this one time because I don't really know him all that well. We've run into each other here and there. When I got to Loyola was when ESPN the magazine first started. Like, I'm talking about, remember the like when they gave out the sweatshirt if you subscribe?
Yeah.
The commercial. Remember the commercial with KG and Steph, all nude but tastefully done? Like, I was one of the first subscribers to ESPN the magazine. And you know who used to kill it in ESPN the magazine? Dan Le Batard. And I was a fan of Le Batard as a writer. He's an excellent writer. He
doesn't write as much as he used to, but I love
not as much. Stuff. Yeah, not as much. But so that was my freshman year of college when I was reading him in ESPN the magazine. I'm like, yo, man, I'm loving how this dude tells stories. And then locally, I grew up obviously like everybody in New Orleans a Saints fan, and so just reading Peter Finney and who else? Who was covering the Saints at the time? Brian Alley Walsh. Just reading the different Times-Picayune writers. That was something that me and my grandfather bonded over, was reading the newspaper. Because I spent a lot of time at their house. My mom was working, or even in the summertime. So I wake up and we try to beat each other to the newspaper, see what's going on at training camp. And so just reading those people locally got me into sports writing. And then once I got exposed to more, when I got to Boston at the Globe, obviously Bob Ryan, Jackie McMullen, people who I'd end up calling colleagues and friends, or even my man Michael Holley, who was my brother and my mentor. Those types of people I started looking up to as I broadened my horizon. So, in terms of who inspired me, it was really more locally than it was some of the giants. Although, like everybody, I grew up watching the sports reporters, watching Bill Rhoden and Ralph Wiley and Mike Lupick on the sports reporters and that sort of thing. Never imagining that there'd come a time when I would do that show or even host that show. So it's just crazy looking back on a childhood that wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. People that I was fortunate enough to able to sit alongside and stand alongside and do television with. Like when I was growing up, SportsCenter was the big shows with Oberman and Dan Patrick.
Right.
That was a big deal. Well, I've worked a little bit with Patrick, hosted Oberman's show when it was on here, been on Oberman's show, and in fact, I'm sitting at my desk at ESPN, and I keep a bunch of random junk on my desk. One of them is this picture of Keith Olbermann that I have on the shelf, and the reason I have this picture of Keith Olbermann on the shelf is only as a reminder of how quickly things change in this business and at this company, because he was, his show was everything not that long ago, and now he's not here, So it's just one of those things I kind of keep around, just be like, you know what, man, you look around, you lose your tunnel vision, you start to look at what everybody else is doing and what they got going on, and next thing you know, like with the snap of a finger, things change. So that's a little tangent, but yeah, it's a lot of people inspired me growing up, and then once I got into business, I just had to kind of keep up with the people that were my peers now, even though they were a lot more accomplished. And I had a lot of people, I can go on and on about the people who took me under their wing and showed me the ropes, but I'll get to that later, I'm sure.
Before we get into the whole ESPN dialogue and conversation, because obviously that's what folks are really interested in. I'm kind of interested in you going from New Orleans to Boston and really having the opportunity to cover a team at its peak and I don't know how much at its peak, but at its peak and covering one of the greatest one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. Like, what was that transition like? I guess as far how did you get that gig? How did you go from graduating from college to relocating at the age of 22 to Boston and covering the Patriots?
Well, that's my favorite story to tell because that one is universal, and no matter how much your times change, everybody can relate to rejection, and everybody can relate to seizing opportunity. So,
right.
Like I said, I had teachers in high school that kind of pushed me into journalism. One of them was married to a columnist at the Times-Picayune in New Orleans, and so that got me looked at to be a high school intern. Well, fast forward to after my freshman year at Loyola, I was about to go to summer school. I get a call from a lady named Lynn Cunningham at the Times-Picayune saying, "Hey, we've never had a sports intern at all in Times-Picayune history, but we want you to be our first."
Oh, wow.
I'm like, all right, cool. You paying too? All right, I'll go make some money to cover some high schools and write some articles. I'll make some money. Cool. It's paying like good money, like good clothes buying, Air Jordan buying money. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, cool. Buy my own stuff. You know, kick it for summer in New Orleans, right? Probably that same summer you was at Xavier. I was probably doing that, right?
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah, and so I do that for a summer. Great experience, and at the same time, you know, as a sophomore, I'm starting to work at the Loyola Maroon, which is a school paper, the renowned, recognized school paper. So here comes the Boston Globe part. So at that point, I'm like, all right, cool. I'm ready to step up. I'm ready to go to a bigger city, a bigger paper. So I get this book, and I basically find all the addresses for like the 30 biggest papers in the country, and you can name them yourself, you know, like LA Times, New York Times, New York Daily News, everybody, Washington Post, anybody you could think of, Philly, anybody you could think of in the country as newspapers, right? This is for a summer internship. This is while I'm still in college. I'm going into my sophomore year. I only got an interview for one out of 30, and that was the Boston Globe.
Wow.
Nobody else. I got like some letters say, "Oh, you missed the deadline," or some letters say, "Nah, we're all set, you know, but good luck. You know, maybe try it next year." The Boston Globe brought me up in December of December of '98. Boston Globe brings me up for an interview. I remember I got the flu while I was up there. I caught some kind of cold while I was up there. They hired me to be the summer intern the following summer, the summer of '99.
Right.
I kill it in the summer of '99. They say, come back next summer. Don't even worry about applying. Just come back next summer. I kill it in the summer of 2000. So then
what are you writing about?
Everything.
So you're covering the Patriots and everything.
The Patriots, the Red Sox. Name a sport. The Patriots, the Red Sox. The Women's World Cup came there one summer. I covered stuff I ain't known about. I covered martial arts. I covered they had some kind of I covered yacht racing. I ain't know nothing about yachts. I covered yacht racing. I don't even know how to swim. I was on boats, didn't know how to swim. I covered Little League. The best thing I ever did. Here's the best thing I did. Here's what got me 2 summers, 2 internships. And this is how life works. I'm telling you how stuff come full circle. I don't even remember what I wrote. I don't think it was particularly that good. But I remember coming in the office on an off day. I came in on an off day to get my mail. And my boss, he says, "Hey, you got a machine?" Back then, computers was called machines. They was just word processors. He's like, "You got a machine?" He's like, "I need you to go cover a Massachusetts team is playing for the right to go to the Little League World Series. I need you to go cover this team. I'm off." Guess where the team was playing? Bristol, Connecticut. Oh. Now, I didn't know that. Obviously, I didn't know at the time where my career was going to take me. So I left Boston, drove to Bristol for 2 hours on my off day to write an article that was buried in the inside of the newspaper that was, you know, couldn't have been no more than 500 words. I don't know, probably less than that. But I put my heart and soul in that article, right? But what stood out to my editor was my willingness to hustle on my off day and do what I was told. And basically just grind, just whatever. I was hungry. And so came back the next summer, and then again, I was covering everything, but they knew I loved to cover football. They knew that was my thing. They absolutely knew how much I loved covering the Patriots and covering the NFL, but I did whatever they wanted me to do, just all in sports. I was fortunate enough to where I was able to do sports, whereas a lot of people have to kind of dabble in news or crime or cops or whatever. I was able to jump right into sports, given my background. And so When I graduated in 2001, I had a job waiting for me at the Boston Globe full time. So that's how I got to the Globe from New Orleans. I had already had exposure there during the summer. And look, timing is everything, man. I get there. I didn't know the Patriots go win the Super Bowl in 2001. So I graduated in May of 2001. In February of 2002, I'm covering the Patriots in the Super Bowl against the Rams. And, of course, you know where that game was played, right?
Where was that game at? That was in...
Come on, guys.
It was in New Orleans. Okay, it was in the zone. I knew it was in the zone.
So I was 2003. That Super Bowl where Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake. That season was in Houston. That was in Houston. In other words, less than a year after I get out of college to go to the Boston Globe, I'm back home covering the Super Bowl for the first time.
Definitely.
Perfect time. Yeah. Perfect time.
You can't make that stuff up. You can't make that up.
Yeah, that's perfect time. One of the questions that's going to be asked with it being such a cultural difference between New Orleans and Boston. What was your feeling going into this situation as a young journalist, a young African-American male journalist going into this environment? What was your conscious saying to you as you were getting ready to embark upon that?
Well, even when I was going as an intern, so go back to being an intern, I drove up to Boston. I drove because I needed my car, but I didn't drive by myself. My parents drove with me. So this was like a 20-some hour drive, 20-something hour drive that they took with me. Dude, I ain't never really been out of New Orleans. I mean, I've taken some trips. I'd even been to Japan as a teenager for like a couple of weeks, but moved out of New Orleans? Look, and we in New Orleans. We in the deep South. Y'all from the South. Y'all understand it. And yet, Boston had a reputation, given the busing, given its history. Boston had a different kind of racism reputation. Definitely. My parents was like, yo, you going to Boston? We don't know nobody up there. It's a different type of white folk up there. It's like we don't know about this. But I was like, look, I got to do this. This is the Boston Globe. This is the best sports section in the country. I got to do this. So I went up there, and like I said, my man Michael Holley mentored me from jump. Michael Holley is one of the most accomplished brothers in this industry, one of the most accomplished people, period, in this industry. Looked out for me from the jump. And, I found good roommates. I went to this church. I met somebody that at the Boston Globe, this sister named Allison Bethel. She sent me to a church, which will come up later. I'll tell you about this church later because that's going to matter. I'm sure I'll find a way to sneak that in. But also, she introduced me to two young ladies who needed a roommate who was subleasing a room. Both of them named Allison. So it's three Allisons, the Allison at the Globe and the two Allisons that were roommates. This could have been a sitcom. Matter of fact, if I write a sitcom based on my life, this is gonna be part of it. This black dude from New Orleans living with two white girls named Allison in Boston.
Oh wow! Wow!
It was lit before the word lit was invented. It was lit. Yeah, but it was all good, man. They looked out for me. They were older. I didn't get to hang out talking about it because Boston, as you know, since you've been there, they don't play with that ID stuff. Coming from New Orleans is I was in the strip clubs when I was 15 years old. Wasn't nobody carding. You go to Boston, it's like, yo, you got to be 21 to get in anywhere. But I was just working all the time, man. I was covering the Red Sox late at night. I was going on the road. I was doing whatever. I was writing, in Foxborough about the Patriots. I wasn't really trying to hang out talking about it. And the thing about Boston, I'll just say this before I take your next question. The thing about Boston, man, is my experience was so cool because of the time I was there and what I was doing. And I ain't saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is what it is that because I did what I did and I did it as well as I did it, man, Boston ain't showed me nothing but love over the years. From the day I was an intern, if you cover in sports, that's the place. If you cover in sports, man, they know their stuff. They hardcore. They support their teams. They read the paper. They're informed fans. And so the fans in Boston, man, they were always good to me.
But that's the question, though. With you covering their teams and maybe coming with a different flavor from your writing style to just who you are, what type of commentary feedback did you receive from your readers?
I mean, I get some of the usual. Once I got on TV, now granted, I was a byline. Most people, you see Michael Smith, most people didn't really know what I was. They just knew my work. Now, when I got on television, see, and here's the other thing, though. This is 2001.
Right.
People, if they want to write to you, they had to write a letter and mail it. This was before Twitter, this was before Facebook, this was before, we had email, but, the email addresses at the bottom of the article in the paper, not everybody was using that. So it wasn't like it is now where you got the trolls and you got the haters and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't quite like that. That said, yeah, man, I got ignorant mail. We all got ignorant mail about stuff we wrote. Also, mind you, I wasn't necessarily a columnist, whereas a columnist like Michael Holley, whose face or, the artwork of his face was in the paper, and he's taking different stances, he's going to get different feedback than the dude that's writing about who practiced and who didn't, or who's hurt and who's not, right? So my role at the time did not necessarily lend itself to the type of feedback that I even get right now as an on-camera face. So the feedback was positive for the most part because they respected the work. They respected the information. They respected the way I approached the job.
I could go on and on and on about that experience.
I can too, but I'm going to try to do a better job of stopping so y'all could actually ask questions because I could go on and on, as y'all know. So
but I can even go on, and we have limited time, so I
got all the time you need. Go ahead.
That was just really my thing as far as being in that environment, a little bit of a foreign environment, but you're expected to bring your perspective and in some cases your opinion to the story. With that, though, was there ever a time when you felt like you had to maybe adjust to the climate or to the people that were going to be reading your work?
Not really, man, because, the Globe was a writer's paper. The Globe was a type of newspaper, especially the sports section, that was not real rigid in its rules or its style. Like, it lent itself to the creativity and the personality of the writers. It wasn't like the copy that's there wasn't aggressive. They weren't trying to dumb down your writing or make it vanilla. They encouraged you to take chances. So whatever I brought to the table was nurtured by a copy desk and a staff, editorial staff, that was interested in me finding my voice. So even though I wasn't a columnist, I was still able to be creative and write in my style. Now, granted, it was a newspaper and this was pre-internet, so people wrote differently then than they do now. But I was still able to be me and let me come through my writing and my reporting. In terms of the only adjustments I had to make, and it wasn't really a bad adjustment, was, look, I'm 22 years old out of college, or even before that I'm an intern. I'm 19, 20 in college. I didn't want anybody to know that just based off looking at me. I didn't want anybody to be able to tell how young I was, how inexperienced I was, just at first glance. So in the way I dressed and in the way I conducted myself, it was always with a maturity that belied my age. Like I had, I played high school football and played as being generous. I was on a team. I got a little bit of a run. I got some little run in there. But I had 3 jerseys because I was a quarterback. I had 3 jerseys in my closet that I rocked. I rocked a Troy Aikman jersey, a Dan Marino jersey, and a Drew Bledsoe jersey. And I didn't really like Bledsoe like that, but it was just like a nice looking jersey. But I thought it was cool. Well, I get out of college, and I go to Boston, and who am I covering? I'm covering Drew Bledsoe, right?
Right.
So I can't be, I was there when Bledsoe got hurt and Brady took over, the whole thing. I can't be like a fanboy, and I can't be like eyes all, wide because I'm in the NFL locker room. Like I had to grow up fast. And so that was the only real thing I had to do once I got to Boston. But in terms of who I was and what I was about, nah, man, I was always able to be me. And I think a lot of the players, look, I was as young as a lot of the players in the locker room. They got cats, that's at ESPN now, or, cats that are have retired that knew me when I was a kid, that I have relationships with going back to when we came up together, or guys that, are still in the league now that I was there when they got drafted, So it helped me, actually, being a young African-American male face in a locker room that didn't have many young black men in it, except for the players.
But how did someone like a Belichick or even a Drew Bledsoe at the time, Brady was still young and young when he took the rim, but how would they respond to your questions, or how did you feel like they treated you going into that organization?
Well, Belichick treated every reporter like shit. Like, I mean, that's just who he is. Put that out there. Right. Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way, because I think I came up with the best training possible. Like, I had basically what amounted to basic training for the media by covering the New England Patriots. Like, nobody had it harder than we did. Like, Belichick made it hard for the media. Like, the only way you can get on Belichick's good side is if you acted as a mouthpiece for the team. And I wasn't willing to do that. So Bill, around 2004, Bill stopped fucking with me altogether, which is fine. Because, I mean, look, are there things I could have done better? Because I was younger, dumber, thought I knew everything? Probably. If I could tell my younger self some things, I'd say, look, man, don't take it that personally, and always remember, and I still tell myself this at age 37, it's not about you. It's never about you. Like, a lot of misunderstandings happen because people make it about them. It ain't about me. So there's a lot of times where, I took exception to some things, I took some things personally, but more or less, I feel like I covered the team with professionalism and objectivity and the type of maturity and the type of fairness that's required. I wouldn't change much about how I covered the team. That said, he didn't want you breaking stories about injuries. He didn't want you breaking stories about contracts. He didn't want you having access to players outside of the locker room. Oh, well, I'm doing my job, you're doing yours. But he respected, and all the players respected, if you did your work or if you knew what you were talking about. So I think they respected me because I asked the right kind of questions, and I did my work, and I knew the game. I mean, I don't know the game on their level, but I feel like I know football as well as, any, if not all, reporters out there,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that was my particular sport that I loved the most. I mean, obviously I grew up loving basketball and baseball and that sort of thing, but football was my main thing. And so, like all people, like they read, they paid attention, and if you knew your stuff, they respected you. So it wasn't that hard to earn their respect, even at a young age, coming from New Orleans, because they know who knows their shit and who doesn't.
Right, and they can filter through the bullshit.
Yeah.
Did you ever cover the Celtics at all, and what was that kind of experience like?
I dabbled in the Celtics a little bit, not full time.
That was Jackie's full time.
Who was the beat writer at the time? I want to say it was Shearer Springer, but yeah, Jackie was on the NBA. Bob Ryan was on the NBA. Peter May was on the NBA at the time. Peter May was a great writer too. But I spent some time around him a little bit. This would have been, I want to say it's the Jim O'Brien Celtics when it was like Paul and Antoine, and they were a playoff team but not a championship contender, and that was cool. I mean, just the experience of being in NBA locker rooms. I got a chance to meet some people. I mean, I'll never forget. This would have been 2003. It was Sixers Celtics, and after the game, by this time I had already been on Around the Horn. So I kind of gotten a little recognition as an ESPN cat. And I was standing outside the Sixers locker room, and AI walks out, and he leans up against the wall to kind of hold court with the media, and just taps me on the chest, like that, that tap on the chest, like somebody, like, what's up?
What's up?
And right. I'm like I ain't never met Allen Iverson, man. I had his sneakers, man. I don't know this cat, but I mean, he knew me and gave me that little respectful tap, like, yo, I see you, player. I'm like, wow, which is the first glimpse of the power of the four letters, and obviously, foreshadowing. Without covering the NBA and covering the NBA playoffs, I'd have never met Jemele, and so that's what she and I met on the NBA beat back in the day when I was at the Globe. So,
and I wanted to, and that was my last question about the Globe. I was going to ask you. I heard the story told from Jemele's perspective about how you all went out and the whole Madden game. You were playing,
man.
You? And I don't know if our audience knows that story.
Right.
I definitely would tell them to go Google YouTube. Jemele's perspective on how y'all met and the whole, they're trying to hook y'all up. But can you tell your side of that story?
Sure. No, and hers is pretty accurate. I just wish she put it into context. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, it was 2002, and she was working at the Detroit Free Press. I was working at the Globe. Pistons Celtics meeting the playoffs. Rob Parker is like, yo, we gotta all go to the movies. So it was Rob Parker, Sherrod Blakely, who I met at NABJ one summer and kept in contact with. Detroit cat, now in Boston. I believe he's still in Boston. Rob Parker, Sherrod Blakely, me and Jemele were gonna go to the movies. Well, naturally, they sat on the outside, had me and Jemele on the inside. Like, he's a black man, she's a black woman. Yeah. They love it. Let's hook it up. You know what I mean? So we sat next to each other. We went to watch the first Spider-Man. And, we exchanged information. That was it. We didn't know nothing popped off. So she comes back to Boston, and she calls, and she was like, I guess she was dropping hints, I guess, but she was like, yo, what's there to do? What's going on? I'm like, yo, I don't know. I was like, but can I call you back? Because, man, I'm trying to liquidate the Arizona Cardinals roster. Like, that wasn't the same Cardinals as it is right now. That was a different Cardinals. Like, it took work to franchise that team. It took work to turn them around.
You had work to do, huh?
I had work to do. Now, here's the thing. All the fellas, and me and my boy Michael Holler, we was obsessed with franchise mode back in the day. So all the fellas that give me shit want to be like, yo, how could you turn down Jemele? Like, you starstruck. Like, don't be looking at it from the perspective of the dude that's at home watching this sports goddess drop knowledge on ESPN now. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, she was a nice young lady and attractive and all that kind of stuff now. But, like, y'all looking at it like, oh, you know, you passed up on Jemele. It's like, yo, man, she wasn't who she is now, and I wasn't who I was now. Yeah, if that makes sense. Plus, you know, I had already met my future wife and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different reasons why I was in franchise mode. But she likes to tell a story like I just was more concerned with video games than women, which is bullshit. Of course I was into women. It just wasn't like, you know, I just wasn't trying to take her out at the time. So look, it worked out because if we would have hooked up and we would have been together, we wouldn't have a show right now.
There would be no show.
Exactly. She'd have hated me. I'd have broke her heart. She'd have hated me. You know, it was for the best. You know what I'm saying? It's for the best.
I agree with that.
Oh, most definitely. I want to get into this the ESPN. Can you kind of talk about transitioning from the Boston Globe to writing for ESPN.com and that whole how that whole ordeal happened?
Yeah, man.
But let me ask you this real fast, and this is the question I've always wondered. Do you, at this point, as a writer for the Boston Globe, and I don't even know if you have one now, but at what do you get an agent? How does that whole hiring process between a Boston Globe and ESPN happen?
I'm trying to make this as quick as I can, but see, my story got so many different twists and turns to it, so I got to go back. All right. So it's August of 2003. Okay, the Patriots have not yet won the second Super Bowl, but they won the first one, and I was part of the coverage. I wasn't a beat writer. I was the backup, what they called it, right? And I was still at the Boston Globe. I had been to the Boston Globe about 2 years, but I'm still a general assignment reporter. I get sent to France, to Paris, to cover the World Track and Field Championships. Only I would be pissed off at that. Now, I was there to go, I went all expenses paid, took my future wife, my girlfriend at the time, took her with me to Paris for 2 weeks. But I wasn't happy.
You were tripping?
You know why I was upset? I was upset because I wanted to be at training camp covering the Patriots because I wanted to cover the NFL, right?
Right.
So this when it comes down to when you put your best foot forward and you take everything and you take your craft seriously, you never know who's watching. So while I'm in Paris, I get a phone call from the sports editor of the Newark Star-Ledger in Newark, New Jersey. They want to offer me not only a promotion, but a promotion beyond the promotion that I would get, because the next step from where I was would be Patriots beat writer. The next step above that is national NFL writer. That job was already occupied too. The New York Star-Ledger was like, yo, we love your work at the Globe. Come be our national NFL writer. I'm like, fucking right. I'm like, shit, you got it. I'm there. But I go to because I'm like, look, I go to the Boston Globe. I go to my boss there. I'm like, yo, are you going to make me the national guy? Because if you're not, I got to go. I got to take this promotion. It's a great gig. It's what I want to do. He's like, I won't make you the national guy, but I'll make you the lead Patriots beat writer. And there's this show that's in ESPN. I will put you on, there's this show that's in the Boston Globe's newsroom, this ESPN show. I'll make sure you get some run on Around the Horn. That's how I started getting on Around the Horn in 2003 as a incentive for me to stay. Because remember when Around the Horn first started, it was like the LA Times, the Dallas Morning News, Chicago Sun-Times, Boston Globe. It was Washington Post. It was it was inside the newsroom. So that's how I got on ATH.
Was Max Kellerman the guy at that time?
Yes.
Max Kellerman was the guy,
memory.
right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And so Max Kellerman, I'm going to answer another one of your questions using Max Kellerman. So I'm on Around the Horn in 2003. Patriots win the Super Bowl again in 2003. In 2004, ESPN is like, yo, won't you just come work for us full time? I'm like, okay. That's where I want to go. Well, where everybody wants to end up. I'm like, cool. It's earlier than I thought, but yeah, I'll leave the Globe. So I left the Globe after 3 years out of college, went to ESPN at 25. You asked about how that works with the hiring process. They kind of find you. I mean, you can find ESPN. You can apply at ESPN and go through that process. You know, whether that's at NABJ, whether you're sending your tape to somebody, whether you're sending your reel, or sometimes they just kind of find and recruit you and be like, "Yo, we interested." Well, Max Kellerman and my man Michael Holley went to Fox, what was that previous incarnation of Fox Sports, and started this show called IMAX. You remember IMAX?
Mm-hmm. I remember IMAX.
Okay, so my man Michael Holley, his agent, who did his contract, Michael recommended him to me because I never had an agent. That's who did my first ESPN contract. That cat is still managing me to this day. Okay, so
you're what, 25 at this point?
I was 25, and ESPN was doubling my salary, so there wasn't no negotiation. I'm like, cool, I'm there.
No need to talk about it.
I'm like, cool, man. Go ahead and negotiate the final points of the deal, but I'm there. And so, you know, that was a tough, that was a frustrating transition, a little frustrating because what ESPN hired me to do and what I wanted to do weren't quite matching up. It's a place that's real hard to get lost in the shuffle. They wanted me to come in and cover the NFL, and I was like, cool, I'll cover the NFL. But the biggest story in the NFL at the time was the Patriots because they were winning like 20-some-odd straight games in a row, back-to-back titles. And I was like, look, if I wanted to cover the Patriots all the time, I'd have stayed at the Boston Globe. So I had to kind of work my way through that. But, you know, the downside of coming in here so young is that you just expect everything to kind of come to you fast. Like you feel like you're ready for a lot of things that you really aren't ready for, but you don't know that you're not ready for them. You don't know that until you're 37 looking back and being like, you know what? Everything happened in due time.
Oh, that's just in corporate America where we work today. I mean, at that young, even with me working in corporate America and trying to navigate in a corporate environment, you can, like you say, you can get lost in the shuffle, or you can try to take on more, but then you look back and say, was I really ready for that?
Right.
Question I have for you: at the age of 25, though, you're on around the horn, and participating in things like that. Do you feel like at that point you were ready? Like, did they give you training to be on those type of shows?
No, I never took broadcasting. I was a print guy in college. Mm-hmm. Like, I was never a broadcast guy. I never anchored a show before. My first time ever hosting a show was NFL Live on ESPN in 2009. Never hosted a show in my entire career. Never did any of that stuff. I was always a writer. But again, writing, you know, makes it, I just think writing lends itself to critical thinking and crystallizing your thoughts in a way that other forms of mass communication just don't. I think if you can write, you can do anything. I don't think just anybody can write. No, to answer your question, I never got training for it. When I went on Around the Horn, I didn't realize, I mean, I was just doing me. I was just approaching it like I approach everything else. Like, I never felt overwhelmed. I never felt out of place. You know, I was 25, but I felt like I belonged. Like, looking back, I don't know what kind of dumb shit I said, you know, because I was young and hadn't seen anything, but I knew my stuff, and what I didn't know, I knew how to find out, and I also had a level of credibility and expertise that came with covering the NFL. So, you know, I obviously had a lot of room to grow, but they seemed to like what I brought to the table, and I never felt overwhelmed. You know,
what's the prep? Do they give you guys like the topics of what the show's going to be, and then you guys go and kind of research it, or how does that whole?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's a conference call that, you know, to this day is still at 10:30. There's a 10:30 Eastern Time conference call. The producer kind of lays out the topics, takes the temperature of the topics, and organizes the show accordingly. And not long after that, the staff of Around the Horn will send out a nice little comprehensive research packet. So obviously you can research on your own or have your own thoughts, but they'll send out articles if you need them. And we usually sat down at around 12:45 and taped it and banged it out. And you know, it wasn't a hard show to do. You know, because it was such a well-produced show, and I got a first-hand look at that. What was that, last week or week before last? Yeah, when I got a chance to host it. So,
and when you got a chance to host it and be the Oprah, when they say you what they say you were doing too much,
happened,
man, BG, that was so funny. BG, that was so funny.
Everybody gets called.
I know that they give out points like candy.
I heard the explanation, but go ahead and
share the explanation. There was this piercing noise in my ear. and it was the tone from PTI was coming in my ear. It damn near bust my eardrum. And so I couldn't hear what anybody was saying. I just was trying to play it off because I should have stopped. I should have said bust, and then we'd have started over. But it was a Miami day. It was late, and they didn't want to start over. So I was like, all right, I'll just roll with it. But it was funny because when I look back on it, I was like, damn, I was giving out a lot of points. Like every time somebody opened their mouth, it was getting a point. I was like, damn, that was bad. But it made it. But that's the thing, man. It's like the thing I've learned more than anything, the skill that I have acquired as I've gotten older, is I have gotten better at being me, and I don't take myself too seriously, man. And it's like I love it when people laugh. I don't mind being laughed at, respectfully, but I don't mind being laughed at. Like I like to put the E in ESPN, and that E is entertainment. And I like people to laugh. So it's like if it became a running joke that I was giving out points like Oprah giving out a car, that's better than TV. That's better TV for me,
And then I watched, because I was on vacation that week too, and I was watching the 12 o'clock His or Hers show, and then they showed the
and Jemele gave me shit.
Yeah, she gave you shit for doing to it. I think Greeny was filling in for you that day.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, that was on his 20th. So I'm in DC. I've been trying to find the PTI around the Horn studio. Allow me to take you out to lunch or something next time. I just want to see what the studio at.
Oh, no problem. That's easy, man. I got a chance to bring my wife and kids in there. Visitors come through all the time. It's ABC News. I'll take you through next time. They said they want to have me back and do it. Tony used to never take vacation. Now he takes a little more vacation. So I'll definitely take you up on that and give you a tour.
If you remember, if I see you, I'm telling you, I'm about to hit you up because I'm like, hey, I just want to go to that studio and just for memories, because that's just always something I wanted to visit. Sorry, BG, I had to drop it.
You're good, man. I had to get You're good. Go ahead and make your reservations. I'm not mad. So you go from New Orleans to the Boston Globe and end up at ESPN. What are your friends and family saying when they see you sitting up on the TV screen?
Man, it's funny. I don't realize it until I go home because, my mom's, like she talks about me all the time, as most moms do. And so every time I go home, she's like, well, let me have Mr. Such and Such come over and say hi to you. Oh, you know who would really love to see you is Miss So-and-so's son. Oh, they really look up to you. Like, oh, he loves you. Like, I need you to sit down and talk to him. So it's like whenever I go home, it's almost like I need like somebody to keep a schedule for me because my mom's wants me to say hi to so many people. Like, it was crazy. Last time I went home, man, is I went around the corner to the corner store, the same corner store I used to go to and buy cigarettes from my mom's when I was underage, or go get a honey bun and a fruit punch after school. Same corner store still sitting there in the East. And the same dude own it with his wife. They ain't aged a bit. Man, they say black don't crack. This Asian couple still look the same. They still look the exact same as they did 20 years ago. And it's like they're like, oh, we watch you all the time. And I'm like, wow. So it really is like, it's a humbling thing. It really is, man. It's even humbling to hear y'all talk about these different things that y'all have seen because, like I don't look at myself as famous or a celebrity or anything like that. It's just like I'm just this dude that's blessed enough to be able to have fun going to work, talking sports with his girl, and, that people recognize. And I just try to have fun, and I think that people have fun watching you have fun. And so to go out and to have people, whether it's at home and my parents be proud of me or my friends of my parents or just random people, like, show love is just really, like, mind-blowing, Like, it's just because, I'm not out there throwing and catching or dunking or shooting or running, none of that kind of stuff. I'm just having fun on TV talking about it. And the amount of people who set their watches and their routine according to my show is just really, it's just crazy, So, to answer your question, I get a lot of love when I go home from friends, from family, from strangers, or when I just go out anywhere. It's just really amazing the amount of reach and amount of impact talking sports on ESPN can have on people.
I've heard you talk about it, and I've seen you write about how there was a period before you met Jemele, before she joined, I guess, ESPN, or you guys started kind of working together, that you were kind of in that you didn't know what was next as far as your career at ESPN.
Right.
Can you talk about that era? And I'm kind of set that up for for how you got started with the His or Hers podcast and numbers that the line set and all of that. But I think it's important that we at least capture that period of you working at ESPN, because you would think that, like, from our perspective, you're at ESPN, that is a dream job to so many people. And so for you to be vocal and for you to be honest and for you to say, hey, there was a period where I didn't know what the deal was with me at ESPN. Can you kind of share that story?
Yeah, no, gladly.
Be sure to tune in to part 2 of this dope interview with ESPN's own Michael Smith. This is the Free Lunch Podcast, a member of the New South Movement Podcast Network, available on iTunes and SoundCloud.